I have a brief concatenation of some anecdotal stories about Dad that some of us kids put together. So I'm just going to read through these. This is from Tony. Back in 1991 or so, he seeded a 7-acre field southeast of the farm in oats and alfalfa. This is the 40 across on the east side of the road for those familiar with the farm south of the Contour Plains. As luck would have it, after swathing the oats to dry, including all the weeds that came up with it, it rained. And it rained some more. At that point, the cut crop was not going to dry on its own, and on top of that, it would kill off much of the new alfalfa. Most likely, there are machines that can gently invert windrows so they dry without shaking the oats off the plant and onto the ground. But being unafraid of manual labor, Dad rounded up us kids and gave us each a pitchfork.
Is it picking it
I'll say
up?
I'm glad I was married at that point, so I wasn't involved in this stuff. Yes, we grumbled to ourselves most of the time we were doing it. He didn't. We played around with a riding lawn tractor for a bit, trying to figure out a way to use it, eventually giving up. Meanwhile, Dutty just kept forking his way across the field. He did not complain. He did not hand off the job to someone else. He did not quit halfway through. He did not yell or complain to us kids about our slow progress. Led by our dad, by hand, we turned that entire field over in one day. The oats were harvested a day or two later, and that field had a nice stand of alfalfa for several years to come. That was one of many times he showed us by example how to live. This is from Jackie. Dad was a devoted husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. His first priority in life was the Catholic faith. Second was his family. He and Teresa met in 1960, where they both worked at the Falls Dairy in Jim Falls. They started dating in the spring of '61 and were married December 30th that same year. Ma always referred to him as that handsome son of a gun. After living about a year in Seattle, while Pete was in the Army, they bought the old Massacora place where yours truly now lives, just down the road from the Socorro farm. Prayer was an important part of the day, of daily life. Material goods, fancy stuff, was not. Dad was a talker more than a writer. He seemed to remember whatever needed to be kept track of. No list were made, well, except of course for the Schwann's list. Most people are either talkers or listeners. He was both. A very friendly guy. There are a lot of things I learned from my dad. He taught me how to be a person of faith and conviction, to act with humility, to work hard, to give generously, to encourage initiative, to assume competence in others, to be fiscally responsible, to lead by example, and how to get other people to actually maybe do what you want them to do, with phrases such as, what a person might do, or what you could do is. This is from Joe. He was fond of the outdoors and went to the shack often. While there, he loved cutting, splitting, and neatly making various piles of wood around the property. We always liked his informative documentary notes on the calendar at the shack. His multiple times reused McDonald's coffee cups and soft drink cups were legendary. His favorite percolator coffee pot and Montana coffee cup were displayed last night at the wake, along with his favorite wood-cutting clothes. Back at home, we had family gatherings at Thanksgiving, Easter, etc. We loved his appropriate and heartfelt prayers before the meal. Dad loved both polka music as well as Mozart and Handel's Messiah. He and Ma visited Salzburg, where Mozart wrote the Coronation Mass, which he loved to listen to. And from Dan, somehow he seemed to know how to do basically everything before there was YouTube. No internet? No problem for him. How did he do it make it as a dairy farmer? Not just getting by, but succeeding even in the 80s and making a good living for himself and for his family. Yes, a lot of hard work. He's easily and the most practically intelligent person I've ever known. Machines, building things, economics, solving problems of all sorts, he could do it all. Without him around, even if he's just in the background, so to speak, I feel lost and confused. I can imagine that after Mom died, he must have felt 100 times worse than we do now. Yet he still was the same dependable, honorable, admirable person who continued to show us that life is worth living. He was certainly sad without Mom and Mary, but I never saw him bitter or angry. His dedication to faith and family who remained must have kept him going. I had one quick thing to add. On those school days where I was too sick to go to school, the typical routine would be I'd be laying on the couch and Mom and Dad would come up from the barn, usually Mom first. She'd make about a 10-second assessment of the situation. And when Dad got in, he'd come over and start questioning, and Mom would pretty quickly say, "He's all right." But he would persist and ask, did your tummy hurt? Do you have a headache? Do you have a fever? Does anything else hurt? Very patiently and compassionately. Between you and me, Mom was almost always right. Just sick of school. But that was an example of how he treated us. So, running through all these, you see a lot of virtues and gifts, and primarily the gift of faith that he was baptized in, immersed in. The faith that he married Mom at this church 60 years ago this month. And in this faith, we now commend to God.